All right, we going?
Yeah, we're ready to go.
All right, hey, welcome to what hopefully is our last part on the origins of the Not Ready for Primetime Players. This is the SNL discussion with Jeff and Mike. And we've covered 7 of them. No, I don't know how many we've covered. We've got 4 left, so I'm terrible at math. But so the next one is Jane Curtin. That's Jeff. Go ahead, Jeff.
Howdy. Sorry, we just watched a Point Counterpoint with Dan Aykroyd and Jane Curtin. It was pretty funny. I hadn't seen that in years. It was good. So
Lauren doesn't like it when you break character, by the way.
No, sorry. And 9 from 4, so we got 4 left. So so I have Jane Curtin. We've done Chevy, Gilda, Lorraine, John, and Garrett, and I'm going to do Jane Curtin. And so Jane was probably the most serious of the group, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
And so when she came on, she was pretty happy just to do Weekend Update, from what I understand. She did other skits, but Jane was born in Cambridge, Massachusetts. She graduated from Covenant Sacred Heart High School, which if that doesn't make you a serious person going to a Catholic high school, I don't know what does. And then she attended junior college for a couple of years, and then went to Northwestern University in Evansville, Illinois, and became a senior and decided to drop out of college to go into comedy. Now, when I look at someone like her, she's not the kind of person I would think would drop out of college to go into comedy.
No.
But she did. And so she wanted to pursue comedy. She joined a comedy group called The Proposition, which I don't think I've ever heard of them. I don't know if they're still around.
Just through my readings. Other than that, I've never heard of them.
I'm not sure where that's at. But she did a comedy, an off-Broadway comedy play called The Pretzels. And that was in 1974, which is just a year before she joined SNL. And so she joins SNL and immediately became a little bit disenchanted with the cast. Surprisingly, because she thought the cast was a bunch of drug-using alcoholics. And she was the kind of person that would come to the show early. She'd come prepared, have her lines memorized, and she wanted to rehearse. She wanted everything to be serious. She wanted to rehearse her lines and have everybody else have their lines memorized, and she wanted everybody to come to work ready to go.
She was a family girl, family woman, and she was 9 to 5, and so that's what she wanted to come, get the job done, and get home. And she was opposite of what Lauren Michaels, wanted to do.
Right, and everybody else. And so her being in an environment where everybody else was, their first priority was to get stoned and then goof around and then stay late. Come in late. She was the opposite of that. So she came ready to rehearse. Her lines were learned. She despised the drug and alcohol culture that she found running rampant around her. And so she sort of tolerated it, but she did tolerate it. She worked well within that culture, and I think she thrived. She was content just doing Weekend Update, but if there was any other skits that were available, it was sort of icing on the cake for her. And she did do well. I mean, just like that, the Point Counterpoint, to me, is still one of the funniest skits I've seen on Saturday Night Live in history of Saturday Night Live. It is so well done. Dan Aykroyd and her played off each other perfectly. Some of the characters that she did besides that, though, in addition to Weekend Update, she did the Mrs. Lisa Lubner. She was...
Mrs. Lubner.
Mrs.
Yes.
Lubner, yeah. She was Lisa's mother in the Lisa and Todd skit. And she also was the Coneheads. She was
the mother of the Coneheads.
Mother of the Coneheads. Yes. And she played in I don't know how many movies the Coneheads had. At least 2 movies for the Coneheads. So she did that. After Saturday Night Live, she was actually one of the more successful television characters. She did Kate and Allie.
Kate and Allie was huge, I thought.
Yeah, it was. She was with Susan St. James, if you remember right. And I found that to be funny. She did the Third Rock from the Sun.
Yes.
And she also did a show called Unforgettable, which is pretty forgettable. So
never heard of it.
Yeah. She did. So anyway, so that was Jane Curtin.
Well, all right, and then next up for me is Dan Aykroyd, her partner on Jane's partner on Point Counterpoint. Aykroyd, let me get over to my notes on what he did before. He was come from a pretty wealthy family. Prior to that, he had operated or owned his own bar in Toronto.
I didn't know
he was in a a morning show with a children's morning show on a radio show he was on. But
he did a morning radio or a kid show.
Yes.
Wow.
And are you sure I did Dan Aykroyd and you didn't?
I did not.
Okay, so that's there's not much I remember if I go by memories because I don't have my notes. But he came from Toronto. He was eventually he was in the Second City. It was an outstanding cast of I don't know the entire group, but I know John Candy was in that cast. Harold Ramis was in that cast. Probably Martin Short was involved, I'm sure, around the same time. Gilda Radner. So it was just an outstanding Toronto Second City group. Came down. He wanted to be part of it, but he also didn't care. If he didn't make it, and he really wanted to make it, but he said, if I don't make it, then he's gonna go back and he already had a life. He had an apartment in the city. He had maybe a farm or something out in the country. The guy was well off already. In fact, the reason why the Blues Brothers, I believe, started, or a very big reason why the Blues Brothers started, is because he owned a bar in Toronto. After that first year, or during that first year, they found they needed a place to hang out where they were not going to be mobbed. They found a really rundown place. They rented it. I think they probably eventually bought it, and they called it the Blues Bar. And they would just go there after the show on Saturday night. And then they would have musicians that wanted to stop by. They let them stop by. And then they also, Jake and Elwood just joined them. And those characters of Jake and Elwood were born, I believe, right there in the Blues Bar. And then they started performing as a warm-up before the Saturday Night Live show started, before the cold opening. And then they said, okay, these guys are doing so well with the audience. Let's give them a spot in Saturday Night Live, and bam, But I think a lot of that, in my opinion, is because of Dan Aykroyd's experience of owning a bar. So he opened up another one, and then they got to practice after hours. So
yeah, he played at a club up there called the Owl, which was a place where a lot of blues bands would go. I think he kind of fine-tuned his talents there. Yeah, he was born. He had Tourette's as a kid, and he had overcome that. And you don't notice that when he's an adult. He also had a condition called syndactyly, where he had webbed toes growing up.
Yeah, that's right.
And then, of course, he got very fortunate because who did he marry?
I don't know.
Oh,
I can't remember.
Yeah, he married Dix. What was her name? Jean Dixon. She played in Spies Like Us with him. Okay. Yeah, so I think music was in his life long before he was even into comedy. And didn't he have I think he had a successful radio show too, didn't he, with a woman before he was even into comedy. So I think he had the kids show, and then he had a successful radio talk show. Mm-hmm. So so he too was pretty well tuned before he even got to Saturday Night
Live. Something interesting about him that after Saturday Night Live is he still, to this day, he refuses to be a host on Saturday Night Live. He doesn't believe that.
I never thought of that.
That past cast members should be. I mean, he doesn't. I've never heard him speak or read about him speaking ill of other cast members hosting the show. Mm-hmm. He just doesn't feel like that they should go ahead and be on the show.
Right.
And that's. But because you're still a cast member. Once you're a Saturday Night Live cast member, you're always a cast member.
Oh, okay.
But he just doesn't feel that way. So you've never seen him, as far as I know, ever host.
Show. Okay. Donna Dixon, that's who he married. She was on Bosom Buddies with Tom Hanks.
Okay.
It was his first TV show, where he dressed up like a girl to live in an apartment. Yeah, Donna Dixon. So, of course, he's had a post SNL career that's been very successful. So that's Dan Aykroyd. And then, of course, my last character that I have is George Coe, probably the least known character, I would say. Would you agree?
Yeah, I'd liken him to, it's almost like Lorne Michaels saw him in a way that everybody eventually saw Phil Hartman. It's kind of like he wanted the experience and kind of be the glue. I don't know if he never necessarily was the glue,
right?
But he wanted somebody in there that
mature.
just was mature and had a little bit more experience. And I don't think he intended on him staying very long anyway.
Well, George was double the age of some of the cast members. George Coe was the older gentleman. If you've seen the very first episode, he played the judge.
Yes.
In that episode. But George Coe, he was born in Queens, New York. He was 46 years old when he joined the cast of Saturday Night Live, which I believe even today that's the oldest cast member that they've had. I think Phil Hartman was probably in his late 30s, maybe late 40s when he joined. And Phil had quite a career even before that. And Phil used to design album covers. He was an artist.
Really?
Yeah. When we get to him one day, we'll go.
Oh yes, I do remember.
He did have quite a career as that. But George Coe, he was only in 10 episodes of Saturday Night Live. I think he was only listed in 1 or 2 as a cast member.
I think George and the next guy they were only listed on the first episode.
One. Well, he played the judge in the first episode. He also, I believe, played Todd's father in one of the Lisa and Todd skits. He came over, and it was hitting on Jane Curtin's character, and so you'll see him in that skit. His tenure was short, but he actually had quite a lengthy career post Saturday Night Live, as he played in. He was a character actor. He actually played in Kramer versus Kramer, which was an Academy Award-winning movie with Meryl Streep and Dustin Hoffman. I believe it's like 1978. Or 79 movie. He also played in Remo Williams, Grey's Anatomy, West Wing, and he also voiced the character Woodhouse in the animated series Archer, which I've not seen that, but that's a pretty big animated series that's out. I think it's even out right now. But he passed away in 2015 at the age of 86. So he actually had a great post-Saturday Night Live career. But a lot of people just didn't know him. He has one of those faces that when you see him, you've seen his face on TV a lot, but you don't really know who his name is. It's kind of like J.T. Walsh, who was a great character actor. When you see him, you know who he is because you've seen him in all these movies, but you don't know who his name is. So he's one of those type of characters. So if you ever get a chance, go look him up, George Coe. You've probably seen him around a lot, but just didn't know who he is, and you didn't know he probably started on Saturday Night Live. So he's a great character.
So the last guy is Michael O'Donoghue. Before we go to him, let's go back to Dan Aykroyd for a minute. Just memorable characters. For me, memorable characters, I would say the salesman. So yes, there's Bassomatic, but he's probably done 2 or 3 other salesman characters. But that was one of his main points going into the show. Being cast is they just loved his salesman, and when he did auditions or he did screen tests, he would do that salesman. The Czech Brothers with Steve Martin. That was actually 2 characters. Steve Martin had a character, Dan Aykroyd had a character, and then whether it was those 2 or somebody else decided to put those guys together, and then they became the Czech. So there's the Coneheads, obviously, and then for me, just off the top of my head, was Jimmy Carter, him doing Jimmy Carter. And I know there were several others that he had done, but
remember he did the toy salesman? He had a bag of glass. And Johnny Flamethrower. Remember that? He had several of those. He also played Julia Childs. Remember when he cut his finger?
Oh my goodness, yes.
And that was supposed to be another actor doing that one, right? Wasn't that supposed to be...
Oh my gosh, yes. I just talked to you about this a month ago, and I cannot remember who that actor was. But they didn't want to do it, and whatever they were going to do, they said when they watched Dan Aykroyd do it, they just knocked it out of the park, way better than what he was going to do. I want to say, and I'm not...
Was it Walter Matthau?
I want to say Walter Matthau or Bob Newhart, but I think Walter Matthau was supposed to be Julia Childs.
Julia Childs, gotcha.
So now the last guy, as we go trying to get this to 15 minutes, is probably going to run just a little bit over, but it was Michael O'Donoghue, and I think this guy's an ass. And he had dark humor. I'm not saying anything wrong with dark humor. I've got some, several friends that have that, and I'm sure we both have a little bit of that within us as well.
But it wasn't for the lighthearted nature of SNL.
But he was just he just treated everyone. He and Chevy treated everyone terrible, and he lasted for 3 years. I think he came back in '81. Lauren had asked him to come back, or prior to Lauren, I don't know, but. He just what are the things about Michael O'Donoghue? He helped find He was a co-founder of National Lampoon magazine. First, it was the Harvard Lampoon, and that guy that started the Harvard Lampoon got with Michael O'Donoghue, and so they made it a national magazine. It led to the National Lampoon Radio Hour. It led to the Lemmings, and any other things that not necessarily. He was with Ann Beats, which was another writer.
Right.
But they got there, and I just don't like the guy from everything I read about him and how much of an ass he was. So he lasted 3 years, and good riddance to him.
Yeah, and I think he felt like his work was the only work that mattered.
Yeah.
And that everyone else's work was substandard.
Al Franken, he would not cut him a break.
No.
He just put Al Franken down.
No, and he wasn't a group writer, so when he would write, he would go off by himself, and the others would not be around him. So, yeah, hardly worth mentioning, but he was part of the original 9.
Right.
So, all right, well, we're going to finish up. This is our episodes, 3 episodes, really into one, on the history of the cast members of the original Not Ready for Primetime Players. Thank you for taking your time to check in with us. We will move forward now with our episode reviews as we go forward, and we'll probably clump those together into some of the best episodes from each season. And we will, of course, start with the first season, probably do the first 5, because those were the original Not Ready Primetime Players. And then we'll go forward from there. I kind of dread the early 80s seasons because some of those weren't so good.
I'm looking forward to them.
I know, but the ones where Lorne Michaels had left.
I know. I'm really looking forward to it. I want to go back and see how bad they are.
Yeah, they were.
And
they were rough.
And everything that they were, the budget was pulled from them. And so I want to see what they could do with what they had to work with. Where a lot of people say, "Oh, it's not as good as the original Primetime Players." I'm going to go into this later. Why? I say yes, it was just as good, but then I realized no, it wasn't. But there's a lot of reasons into it, and it just depends on the way you look at things.
Right.
And so I'm actually looking forward to those years without Lorne Michaels.
Okay.
But I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys. Nice to talk to you guys. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
All right.